What happens when a self-made CEO walks into one of his own dog daycares in disguise and finds the best worker barely holding on? Gavin Foster built his business from nothing but a rented van, 4 crates, and a heart for dogs. Years later, he owned 10 dog daycare centers across Oregon and Washington. But lately, something felt off. Customer reviews had dipped at the Vancouver location. A few people mentioned long wait times, unreturned calls, and one even said their dog came home anxious. The district manager, a guy named Barry, said everything was running smooth, but Gavin didn't buy it. Barry was always more numbers than heart, so Gavin made a call. He'd go undercover not as the CEO but as a new part-time trainee. Nobody at the Vancouver branch had met him. With 10 locations, most employees just knew the business was corporate-owned. Gavin was rarely on site these days. He spent his time working on expansion, investor meetings, and hiring for the upcoming Seattle branch. His assistant helped him craft the disguise: a shaggy haircut, glasses, and a fake resume under the name Greg. The resume was basic, some kennel experience, helping out at his cousin's boarding center, looking to work with dogs again after a break from the industry. He walked into the Vancouver location on a drizzly Thursday morning, wearing a thrift store hoodie and jeans. The place smelled like wet fur and bleach. A yellowing sign behind the front desk read, "We wag with love." A woman at the front desk looked up, distracted. She had her phone halfway out of her pocket. "You Greg?" she asked. Her name tag read, "Kelsey Shift Lead." "Yeah, first day," he said. She didn't shake his hand. "Cool, you'll shadow Georgia. She's in the back with the large breeds. Hope you brought boots." She gestured toward a heavy metal door. No orientation, no warm welcome. Gavin pushed the door open and stepped into chaos. A dozen large dogs barked, jumped, spun in circles. A young woman in muddy coveralls was crouched near the corner, separating 2 dogs locked in a growling stare down. "Hey, gimme 1 sec," she said, not looking up. She moved fast, fluid, tugging leashes, redirecting energy. She tapped a German shepherd's hip, then tossed a tennis ball across the yard to break up the tension. The dogs scattered after it. Only then did she glance over. "You must be Greg," she said, brushing hair from her face. "I'm Georgia Ramirez, early 20s. Exhausted eyes, dirt under her nails, kindness in her voice, he nodded. "Yeah, first day, I'm supposed to shadow you." She gave a tired laugh. "Lucky you." They spent the next 2 hours in the yard. Gavin tried to keep up. Georgia worked like she was 3 people. She knew every dog's name, temperament, feeding schedule, and stress triggers. When a new client arrived, an anxious golden retriever named Maple Georgia dropped what she was doing to greet the dog like it was her own. But something felt wrong. No one else came to help. Kelsey didn't step in. A second shift worker, Matt, arrived late, then disappeared into the break room. By lunch, Georgia was still going. Gavin leaned on the fence, sweat on his forehead. "Don't you get a break?" he asked. She glanced at her watch. "Usually not. I cover both shifts." "We're short again." "Short?" "Yeah, one of the girls quit last week, said she couldn't take the yelling anymore." "Yelling?" She looked toward the office window where Barry sat with his feet on the desk, scrolling on his phone. "Let's just say." "Not everyone here cares about the animals," she said. Gavin stayed quiet, watching her break up another scuffle near the water bowls. It was clear. She loved the dogs, but she looked like she hadn't slept in days. At the end of the day, they dragged out the mop buckets. Georgia's phone buzzed. She checked it, sighed, and shoved it back in her pocket. "Everything okay?" Gavin asked. "My sister. She's watching my kid again. I was supposed to be off at 5, but Matt bailed again." "You have a kid?" "Yeah, 2-year-old. I pick up extra shifts to cover daycare." "Not that it makes a difference," he hesitated. "If you don't mind me asking, how much are they paying you?" She wiped sweat from her forehead. 14 an hour. Gavin froze. That was below even the base pay he'd approved a year ago after minimum wage had gone up. 14, he asked again, quieter. She nodded. Barry said it's all they can do right now. Budget's tight, apparently. He clenched his jaw. Barry had lied to his face 2 weeks ago, said all wages were updated. Gavin felt his stomach twist. He helped her clean the last kennel, then walked out with her. "You ever think about leaving?" he asked. "All the time," she said. "But I don't want to leave the dogs. They're the only part that makes sense here." She smiled down at a blind husky leaning against her leg. Then she walked off toward the bus stop, backpack slung low, hair still damp from the hose. Gavin stood there in silence, watching her disappear into the rain. He'd seen enough. Gavin showed up again the next morning, 20 minutes before opening. Rain tapped lightly on the roof of the one-story building, and the parking lot was empty except for Georgia's rusted blue sedan. The lights inside were off, but he saw her silhouette through the back window, already in the yard, setting up water stations and checking perimeter fencing. He knocked once, stepped inside, and made his way through the dim lobby. The front desk was vacant. A pile of client intake forms sat unsorted, and a week-old coffee cup balanced on a stack of unopened mail. He pushed through the back door and called out, "Morning." Georgia turned, hands covered in kibble dust. "You're early. Figured I'd learn more that way," he said. She gave a short nod and handed him a bucket. "We have 6 early drop-offs. You'll help rotate the small dogs in first. Door code's still not fixed, so you'll have to bang on it when it sticks." They got to work. The small dog yard was cramped with one broken agility ramp and a patch of worn turf. The dogs trickled in, each with their own set of instructions. Georgia remembered everyone. Charlie needed soft treats only. Daisy couldn't be crated near loud barkers. Milo had a paw injury that required a wrap change. Gavin watched her move between tasks like she'd rehearsed it for weeks. By midday, a pattern emerged. Georgia handled nearly everything. When Kelsey finally arrived, she spent most of her time at the desk, tapping away at her phone or chatting with a delivery guy about a concert she was going to. Matt showed up late again, reeking faintly of cologne and fast food, and disappeared into the restroom for 20 minutes. Gavin tried to cover what he could, but he was still pretending to be new. He asked for instructions on things he already knew how to do: where to store medication logs, how to properly disinfect toys just to keep up the act. After lunch, Georgia sat on an upturned crate, rubbing her shoulder. He sat beside her, careful not to slip on the wet concrete. "You ever talk to Barry directly?" he asked. She didn't look up. "Only when he needs something." "What's he like?" Her jaw tightened slightly. "Depends who's watching," he nodded, letting that sit a moment. "You trust him to run this place right." She pulled a treat pouch from her belt and refilled it in silence. "I trust the dogs to tell me when something's wrong," she said finally. "People, not always." Gavin watched one of the hounds limping slightly across the yard. "What happened to that one?" he asked. "Bent her nail 2 days ago. I filed an incident report, told Barry she needed a vet check. He said to monitor it for now." "Did the owners know?" I called, left 2 messages. No response. He pushed his hair back, trying to keep his expression neutral. "You think they'd care more if they knew?" She smiled without humor. "Most would. Some don't want to hear bad news. They just want to believe we're miracle workers." He stood and grabbed a leash. "Show me the feeding routine." "Sure," she said, rising slowly, "but you'll need gloves." The kitchen's a mess. The food prep area was tucked behind the main kennels. A narrow hallway led to a room with stacked bins and dented metal bowls. A mop leaned in the corner, long dried with crusted fur. Georgia opened the fridge: 2 containers of cooked chicken, 3 bottles of prescription capsules, and an open bag of wet food that smelled sour. She sniffed it and grimaced. "This expired last week. You guys throw stuff like that out when I can." "Barry says to log it and use discretion." Gavin opened one of the drawers. A paper list of feeding instructions was smudged with water stains and barely legible. Several columns had corrections written in pencil, some crossed out. "Who's in charge of updating this?" he asked. "Technically Kelsey, realistically, me." He ran his fingers across the counter. "Dust, grease, unmarked pill bottles shoved in a corner." They finished feeding just as a storm rolled in. The dogs grew restless. Thunder cracked outside and a shepherd started pacing in circles. Georgia moved fast, separating the anxious ones, redirecting others with puzzles and chew toys. She knelt beside the shepherd and whispered something only the dog could hear. Gavin stepped back, watching not just her technique, but the calm she carried in the middle of noise and chaos. But then came shouting from the front lobby. "I don't care what the chart says, my dog's collar was missing yesterday," a man's voice. Loud, accusatory. Georgia sighed and stood. "That's the 3rd time this week." They walked to the lobby together. A man stood near the front desk, flushed and irritated, waving a pink leash in one hand. "I brought her in with this collar 2 days ago," he barked. "Now it's gone." Kelsey stood behind the desk, arms folded. "We don't hold personal items unless they're clearly labeled," she said flatly. "It was labeled," he snapped. Georgia stepped forward. "I can help. What was your dog's name?" "Luna, Chocolate Lab. She was here Monday and Tuesday." "I remember her," Georgia said. "Give me a second." She disappeared into the lost and found cabinet behind the front wall. A moment later, she returned holding a faded pink collar with a tag that read Luna H. The man's face softened slightly. He took the collar, muttered something under his breath, and left. Gavin turned to Kelsey. "Why didn't you just look?" she shrugged. "Wasn't sure it was worth the time." "People lose stuff all the time." He glanced at Georgia. She didn't say anything, just went back to the yard. Later that afternoon, Gavin helped her hose down the kennels. She worked silently, shoulders hunched, lips pressed into a line. "You ever think about what you'd change if you ran this place?" he asked. She paused, water still running. "I'd start by hiring people who actually want to be here," she said. "Then I'd fix the outdoor drains, replace the turf, clean out the vents up top." "But that's fantasy stuff." "Why fantasy?" "Because when I suggest things, they get laughed off. Not in the budget, or that's not your lane, so I just do what I can." Gavin shut off his hose. "What would it take for you to leave?" She blinked. "Why, just wondering." She looked at the dogs curled in the corner kennels, then back at him. "I'd leave if I thought someone better would take care of them, but I haven't seen that person yet." They finished closing together. Georgia double-checked every latch, every bowl, every medication log. Kelsey had already left. Matt disappeared without saying goodbye. The last thing Georgia did was tape a note to the fridge. "Do not use the wet food expired." "Gee," she pulled her jacket on and turned to him. "You coming in tomorrow?" "Yeah," he said. "Wouldn't miss it." She nodded once, then stepped into the rain. The door closed behind her. Gavin stood alone, staring at the note on the fridge. Then he walked to the office door. It was locked. Through the small window, he saw Barry's laptop open on the desk and a stack of unopened mail beside it. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He tapped a number and waited. "Brenda," he said once someone picked up. "Yeah, it's Gavin. I need you to pull the payroll records for Vancouver. Send me everything from the last 6 months and find out when Barry last did a full site inspection." He hung up before she could respond. Then he turned off the lights, locked the door, and stepped out into the dark. The following Monday, Gavin arrived just before the sun broke through the gray Pacific Northwest sky. He no longer needed to guess what he'd find inside. The scent of damp rubber mats and the scrape of kennel doors opening were already familiar. But this time, something had shifted, not in the building, but in him. He'd spent the weekend reviewing payroll records, incident reports, and internal memos. Barry hadn't filed a single equipment maintenance request in over 4 months. Employee evaluations were either skipped or rubber stamped. Most damning, Georgia had not received a single wage increase since she was hired 17 months ago, even though company policy required performance reviews every 6 months. He walked in past the front desk still unmanned and entered the back hallway just as Georgia was unlocking the side gate for early drop-offs. She looked up, hair pinned back, sleeves already rolled. "You're early again," she said, not surprised this time. "Didn't want to miss the fun." She pulled the gate wide and turned back toward the kennels. Her limp had worsened slightly, just enough to be noticeable now that he was paying attention. He followed her into the yard. "You hurt your leg?" he asked. "Slipped yesterday when I was lifting one of the water jugs. Nothing major." "You tell anyone," she paused, then gave a half shrug. "No point, we're short again today, I'll rest later." He didn't argue. She wouldn't have listened. By mid-morning, the yard was crowded. Georgia moved slower than usual, not from laziness, but from the kind of fatigue that settles deep in joints and muscle. Gavin covered what he could, but the imbalance was glaring. Matt hadn't shown up. Kelsey was in the front, talking loudly on speakerphone. The dogs were restless, picking up on the tension. Around 11, a golden doodle named Jasper snapped at another dog over a rubber bone. Georgia stepped in quickly, separating them without raising her voice. She redirected Jasper to a quiet corner, checked both dogs for injuries, and noted the incident in a small notepad she kept tucked in her waistband. "That happen often?" Gavin asked, watching her write. "More lately. Dogs get overstimulated when we're behind on rotations. You ever ask for more help?" She gave a dry laugh. "I used to, then I stopped." He didn't press further. Instead, he walked over to the water station and started refilling the containers without being asked. When they returned inside, the mop bucket had been tipped over, soaking the edge of the dry food bins. Kelsey stood nearby, staring at the mess with her arms crossed. "Matt was supposed to empty that," she said. Georgia grabbed a towel and knelt to soak up the water. "You could have called someone," Gavin said. "I'm not touching that," Kelsey replied, backing away with a look of distaste. "I'm not on cleanup today." Georgia didn't respond. She just kept blotting the floor, jaw tight. That afternoon, a new dog arrived, a wiry terrier named Theo. His owner, a woman in her 50s wearing hiking boots and a windbreaker, looked concerned. "He's had a rough few months," she explained. "Moved around a lot, can get nervous if he's crowded." Georgia knelt beside the dog without hesitation, letting him sniff her hand. "We'll give him space," she said. "He's in good hands." The woman relaxed a little, but before she left, she looked around the lobby. "This place used to feel more. I don't know, Lively. Is it under different management now?" Georgia stood, brushing fur from her knees. "Same ownership. Just a few staff changes." As the woman left, Gavin watched Georgia walk Theo to the quiet playroom near the back. She moved gently, never tugging the leash. The dog followed close, tail low but steady. Later that hour, Barry arrived. He didn't knock. Just pushed open the office door and walked across the floor with a to-go cup in one hand and a laptop bag in the other. Kelsey perked up immediately. "Hey, Barry, I restocked the treats like you asked." "Finally," he muttered. "Took long enough." He didn't acknowledge anyone else. Gavin watched him disappear into the office, closing the door firmly behind him. Georgia didn't react. She just kept folding towels in the corner, folding each one precisely before stacking it on a shelf. "You ever talk to him about the understaffing?" Gavin asked quietly. "I've tried," she said. "He tells me to prioritize better, that's his solution." "You ever go over his head?" She shot him a look. "You think that would work?" He didn't answer, just kept folding beside her. At 4:30, a client arrived early for pickup. Georgia was still disinfecting crates. Kelsey shouted from the front, "Can someone grab Luna? Owner's here." No one moved. Gavin stepped toward the back, then stopped. Georgia was already halfway there, limping slightly but keeping pace. He followed her to the kennel. "You should sit down," he said. After closing, they walked together to retrieve the dog. As the client left, Barry stepped into the lobby. "Georgia, I need you to stay late," he said without looking up from his phone. "Matt's not coming." "I already covered his shift yesterday," she said, "and today." "That's just how it is." She didn't argue, just nodded and turned back toward the yard. Gavin followed in the back hallway. He stopped her. "You shouldn't keep doing this," he said. "If I don't, the dogs suffer." "What about you?" She gave a tired smile. "I'll be fine." "I've been worse." He looked at her, then at the clipboard in her hand. The ink had started to smudge from the constant damp. He couldn't wait any longer. He left her with the clipboard and walked to the office. Barry was seated behind the desk, scrolling through a spreadsheet, earbuds in. Gavin knocked once, then opened the door. Barry looked up, annoyed. "You need something?" "Yeah," Gavin said. "Take out your earbuds." Barry frowned. "Who are you again?" Gavin stepped forward and closed the door behind him. "Name's Gavin Foster," he said. "Owner?" Barry stared for a beat, confused, then his face drained of color. "No, you're not," he said. "You're the new guy, Greg." Gavin reached into his jacket and pulled out his wallet. He dropped his ID on the desk. Barry picked it up with trembling fingers. "I've been here 3 days," Gavin said. "Long enough to see the shape this place is in. The payroll lies, the falsified reports, the neglect, I've seen it all." Barry stood, hands shaking slightly. "Look, I can explain." "I don't need an explanation," Gavin interrupted. "I need your keys." Barry blinked. "What? You're done. Effective now. HR will follow up. You're not walking back out to that floor." Barry opened his mouth again, but Gavin cut him off. "I've seen how you treat people. I've seen how you ignore safety reports, let equipment fail, let good employees carry the load while you sit in here watching spreadsheets. You failed the animals, you failed the staff, and you failed me." He held out his hand. Barry hesitated, then slowly reached into his pocket, pulled out the keyring and dropped it into Gavin's palm. Gavin didn't say another word. He opened the door, stepped out, and called over his shoulder. "Wait here. Someone will escort you out." He walked past the front desk, past the kennels, and into the yard, where Georgia was kneeling beside a dog with a slow heartbeat. She looked up. "Everything all right?" Gavin nodded once. "Yeah," he said. "It's about to be." The next morning, Gavin arrived before sunrise. No disguise, no borrowed name, just himself, hoodie peeled back, ID badge clipped to his belt, and a binder tucked under one arm. The parking lot was quiet, except for George's car parked in its usual spot, its windshield fogged from the inside. He unlocked the front door, turned on the lights, and made his way to the office. Barry's desk was cleared out, the seat left pushed back, a coffee stain still drying near the edge. Gavin tossed the binder onto the desk and pulled out a printed schedule, then laid it next to a stack of handwritten notes he'd compiled overnight. By the time Georgia stepped through the gate, soaked from the rain and dragging a bag of kibble under one arm, he was already waiting for her at the front counter. She froze, eyes darting to the badge on his belt, then back to his face. "You're Gavin Foster," he said. "Owner," she didn't say anything, just stood there, dripping and silent. He motioned her behind the desk. "Come with me," he said. They walked to the break room. He pulled out a metal chair and waited for her to sit. "I owe you an apology," he said. "Not just for the mess you've been dealing with, but for not seeing it sooner." She studied him. Her jaw was still tight, but her shoulders had dropped slightly. "I thought you were just another temp," she said. "I wanted to see what was really happening here. I couldn't trust the reports I was getting anymore. Turns out I was right not to." She leaned forward, arms resting on her thighs. "So what happens now?" He opened the binder and turned it toward her. Inside was a revised staffing schedule, adjusted pay brackets, and newly outlined safety procedures. A separate page listed upcoming repairs, drain replacement, ventilation cleaning, turf resurfacing, all marked with vendor names and scheduled dates. "There's a lot to fix," he said. "Some of it will take time, but the first thing I'm doing is offering you a promotion." She blinked. "A promotion? I want you to lead this location. Not in title only, full authority over operations, hiring, scheduling, training. You've already been doing the job without the power or the pay." She didn't respond right away. Her fingers hovered over the edge of the binder. "And if I say no, then I'll still fix the problems," he said. "But I'd rather do it with someone who actually understands this place." She reached for the schedule, eyes scanning the revised shifts. "Kelsey's not on here. She's being transferred out," he said. "Different role. One she's more suited for. And Matt let go this morning." She looked down, then back at him. "How much authority are we talking? You'll approve every new hire. You'll have a direct line to me, no middlemen, no bottlenecks. And pay," he slid another sheet forward, "a raise. Not just for her, but for every remaining staff member. Adjusted for tenure, performance, and cost of living." She stared at the figure next to her name. "This is real." "I don't do symbolic gestures," he said. She leaned back in the chair, arms folded. "You're going to have a hard time filling the gaps. Nobody wants to work here right now." "I know. That's why I'm starting recruitment myself. Today," she arched a brow. "You're hiring, I'm interviewing, personally, until we get a team that fits." She nodded once, then again, slower. "All right." He stood and offered his hand. She hesitated, then shook it. "I'll hold you to all of this," she said. "I hope you do." They spent the next hour going over details, how to structure onboarding, where to order new sanitation supplies, what to prioritize first. She moved quickly, making notes in the margins, crossing out redundancies, adding reminders in clean block letters. By noon, 2 dogs had been picked up and 3 more dropped off. Georgia stayed in the yard while Gavin took over front desk duties. When clients asked for Barry, he told them there'd been a change in management. Most just nodded and signed their forms. At one point, a woman came in with a shy pit bull wearing a vest labeled "Nervous. Please be gentle." Gavin escorted them to the quiet room, then called Georgia in. She crouched low, letting the dog sniff her hand. It trembled but didn't pull away. She gave it space, then slowly introduced a soft toy. After the owner left, Gavin waited until they were alone. "You've got away with the nervous ones," he said. "It's not a way," she replied. "It's just patience. Most people don't have time for that." "Now you'll have help," he said. "Real help, not just names on a schedule." She didn't smile, but her voice was lighter when she said, "We'll see." By late afternoon, he'd interviewed 2 applicants. One had kennel experience, the other had worked at a grooming center. Neither had the polish of a corporate resume, but both had a comfort around dogs that couldn't be faked. Georgia watched through the window, arms crossed, expression unreadable. After they left, he joined her in the yard again. The clouds were breaking overhead, rays of light spilling across the turf. One of the lab mixes rolled onto its back, paws in the air. "You think we'll get it back?" she asked. "Get what back?" "The trust. From the staff, from the customers. It won't happen overnight." "But if we do it right, it'll stick." She nodded, kneeling to check a dog's paw pads. "I'll write up an incident protocol tonight. The old one's useless. Send it to me. I'll review it." She paused. "You're not just saying that now because you feel guilty, right?" "No," he said. "I said it because I want you leading this place, and leaders should shape the rules they're held to." She didn't respond, just moved to the next kennel, checking the latch. As the sun dipped lower, one of the new hires returned for a second interview. Georgia led him through the back, testing his leash handling and observing his reaction to a bark-happy husky. She didn't say much, just watched. Afterward, she handed Gavin a simple note, "Not a fit, not calm under pressure." He nodded and tossed the resume. By close, the dogs were settled, the play areas swept, and the food prep room scrubbed clean. Georgia double-checked the medication log, initialed the bottom, and slid it into a new folder marked Reviewed. She started to reach for her coat, then paused. "You staying late again?" she asked him. "Not tonight. You've got it handled." She hesitated. "Feels weird, leaving on time." "Get used to it." She pulled her coat on and walked to the door. Before stepping out, she turned back. "I'll be here early tomorrow. Want to try rotating the anxious dogs first?" "Might help with the mid-morning energy spike." He nodded. "Good idea. Let me know what you need." She gave a small wave. "See you then." When the door closed behind her, Gavin stood in the quiet. The space felt different now. Not because of the repairs or the new documents on the desk, but because someone who cared was finally shaping it from the inside. He grabbed the mop, finished the last corner of the hallway, then shut off the lights. The place wasn't perfect. Not yet. But for the first time in months, it felt like it could be.